A spring transfer portal wish list for the Ducks. It's not too long. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show. Thank you to everybody who has done so, and thank you for this episode being brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. I have a competitive side. I'm not going to hide that, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly that I've already downloaded, and you should too. Join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now on the free App Store or Google Play. So, plenty to get to on today's show. Why Oregon could be after Georgia running back transfer Andrew Paul. An interesting thought came in from one of you via the mailbag, and a 2025 recruit, Isiah Mozee. He's committed to the Ducks. We'll talk about him later in today's show as well. But let's start here, and we're going mailbag right off the top because it's a topical mailbag question. YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access, go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below. You get all sorts of other perks as well. This came in from The Camel. Alrighty. Question for LOD, that's Locked On Ducks. For round 2 of the portal, who are your top 5 wish list portal players for the Ducks? Best players, best fits, you pick the criteria. As always, kudos for the rock star work. So, first of all, appreciate the kind comment. Second of all, it's hard to pinpoint 5 specific players. Number 1, Jacoby Mathews. Jacoby Mathews is number 1. That's a guy who I'd really be excited if Oregon was able to land. 5-star safety transfer from Texas A&M, was part of that big-time recruiting class in 2022. That's a guy who I would think could come in and really boost Oregon secondary in a significant way, and you'd be looking at, just a completely revamped unit on that side of the ball. You're going to be seeing that anyway, but I think that Mathews would be at the top of the list there. After that, look, you can go in the portal and frankly talk yourself into whichever player that you like, right? Because all of these guys are transferring and feel like they can find homes because they've got potential. Either they were highly touted recruits or it didn't work out initially. But I think the wish list for Oregon should start at the safety position. Talked about that earlier this week. I've only doubled down on that over the last few days. I think getting a safety, it's not something I feel like needs to happen for Oregon to have a good secondary in 2024. I think it's just the biggest area where the Ducks can improve. So safety would be with Jacoby Mathews would be number 1. Elsewhere, though, where I think a transfer could serve the Ducks well, I would actually look at linebacker because you've got 3 talented linebackers coming in this 2024 cycle. You've got Dylan Williams, Braden Platt, and Kamar Mathuti, right? All 4-star blue chip guys who I expect to be able to have starting caliber careers with the Ducks. But if you look at guys who are similarly rated, or a guy, I should say, coming out of high school, Devin Jackson is going into his 3rd year with the Ducks' redshirt sophomore campaign. He's been a regular rotation player for the Ducks, particularly in 2023. But he hasn't fully emerged yet. I think it's pretty rare for linebackers to come in and play as true freshmen, or at least have a big role, right? Justin Flo would have been that. He was a physical freak before he unfortunately suffered a lot of injuries. Noah Sewell, again, an anomaly at that particular spot. So I think without Jamal Hill, who was a really, really good veteran presence last year, I don't know that Connor Soley's a guy who, came in via the portal from Arizona State last year. If that's someone they feel like they would slide over into that 4th linebacker spot, but that spot is very much available, right? And maybe Jerry Mixon, who was a 2023 recruit, maybe he, who played once games kind of got out of hand last year, maybe he's ready. Maybe he is ready in his 2nd season to take that step forward. But, when you talk about a 2 deep, Oregon's trying to have a starting caliber player with almost no drop off from your starters. Like that's what the best teams in the country are able to do. You look at Michigan or Georgia, anyone defensively can go too deep and really not have a massive drop off there. We're like, wow, it feels like the defense can just go and exploit that particular area there. Now, if Jerry Mixon's ready, great. But if there is a depth piece at linebacker that Oregon could add, I don't think you're going to bring in someone that can supersede, certainly not Jeff Bassa, but I don't think Justin Jacobs either for one of the top 2 linebacker spots. But Oregon had 5 linebackers in rotation last year regularly throughout the course of the season. When you look at the snap counts, Devin Jackson was the 5th. I don't know if Bryce Betcher can be counted on again this fall, the way he was a year ago. So that would leave you with, even if Mixon is ready to take that step, a true freshman maybe playing some significant snaps in there. So I could see a depth piece at linebacker being a useful addition for the Ducks. The other one that I'm looking at, and I don't know if a high enough caliber option would be available, but certainly along the defensive line on the interior, if you can find a veteran starter in there, I think that'd be really, really good. I don't know if Oregon is after him, but a name to look for in the portal, Damonic Williams was, I think, a freshman All-American his first year at TCU, all Big 12 selection this past year. If you can find a guy of that caliber, and he is in the transfer portal, if you can find a guy who plays on the interior at that level, I don't think Oregon has any need or desire to add players at defensive end or edge, because I think they just have a lot of bodies and a lot of really, really solid guys at that spot. But if you can line up next to Jamari Caldwell, someone like Williams, who was an all Big 12 caliber guy this past season, and then your depth pieces are guys like Aiden Breland or Jericho Johnson, true freshman in 2024, or guys like Amari Washington or Johnny Bowens or Terrence Green from the 2023 class. You've got, Keon Ware-Hudson still around along that defensive line. I think that would be a really, really good situation. And don't want to forget Ben Roberts can be in that mix as well. But, that's a lot of, Roberts and especially Keon Ware-Hudson. Keon's been around for a while. He's been around for a long while along the defensive line. I think you know what he is, right? He's solid, pretty high floor, not the highest ceiling necessarily at this point in his career. I don't have massive expectations for him. And, if one of the younger guys are able to beat him out on the depth chart, I wouldn't be surprised at that either. But certainly he's someone who you know what you're going to get from. He's not going to, get pushed around. He's also not going to take over games or make a bunch of huge splash plays. So I think on the offensive side of the ball, the need for transfers, I think it's already been fulfilled. I think the offense is so set. And I think defensively, Oregon is in a really, really good place. But that would be, if they were able to somehow get Williams from TCU, that I think Damonic, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. If they were able to get him or a guy of that caliber, that'd be excellent to line up next to Jamari Caldwell on the interior. The linebacker, just as a depth piece. I don't think Oregon needs a starter, but a depth piece in there could certainly be valuable. And then getting a safety, Jacoby Mathews would be the number one target there. But when the portal first opened, Oregon was reportedly interested in Andrew Paul, the running back from Georgia. Why? Well, one of you actually had a really interesting thought, and we're going to talk about that next. You know what else is interesting? Yahoo Finance. Yeah, that's right. A sponsor of Locked On Ducks here at the show. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. It's the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, opinion or original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, that was a great mailbag question there from the Camel, and I love mailbag questions so much so that we've got two of them here. Post second segment sip. You know how to get in. Mailbag always open. This one from Act the Duck. Nice. That I haven't heard that name before or anything close to it. Props for creativity right there. Hey, Spencer, could the interest in the running back from Georgia, that's Andrew Paul is his name, in the portal be because DeJuan Riggs has decided to go elsewhere, probably not Ohio State, but somewhere? Can't ever rule out this possibility. So Riggs is a 2024 running back commit for the Ducks, the only one from the high school ranks in this latest recruiting cycle, because they brought in Jay Harris from Northwest Missouri State. He's a transfer. And that's it. Riggs is the only running back in the class. And certainly, going into spring ball, I'd have him as fifth on the depth chart just because he's the least experienced. And, everybody else has either already been there for a year or is a transfer. And transfers tend to have a priority on the depth chart and a better chance to play than do high school recruits. So, it's one of the reasons that guys go into the portal so often is portal guys come in and high school recruits who thought they were going to have a chance to play end up going out. So, Carlos Laughlin was the guy who recruited Riggs to Oregon. He's now at Ohio State. I could absolutely see this being a possibility. Now, I don't think he'd be the only potential Oregon running back to transfer out of the room. I think Jayden Limar could be a candidate for that as well, because with the introduction of Jay Harris, he can present something that Limar can't, and that's just being a big, physically imposing guy. Limar is, certainly a promising running back prospect. This is not a bash Jayden Limar segment by any stretch of the imagination. I think that for Limar, his path to playing time is narrowed by the arrival of Jay Harris. And I think, frankly, they could have a little bit of a running back battle for the number 3 spot. Sort of. What do I mean by that? If Oregon were to go with a short yardage specialist in this backfield, it would be Jay Harris. Now, that's not a guarantee that Harris is going to see the field in, a significant role the way Jordan James did a couple of years ago, or Cyrus Habibi-Likio, or think of like what LeGarrette Blount was back in the day with LaMichael and Kenyon back there as the top 2 guys, and he's kind of the change of pace back. Certainly, he can be that big bruiser that, LeGarrette Blount kind of was. He just has that size and that physicality to him when you look at a guy who's just, as big as he is, but also as powerful with his speed as he can be. So he can have that role. Limar cannot. Now, conversely, Jayden Limar, who's, in the 5'10", 5'11" range and is not he doesn't weigh quite as much. Let me look up real quick what his weight is listed at. Limar is not an untalented guy by any stretch of the imagination. They don't list his weight on the Oregon website. Highly irritating. I'm just kidding. But he's around 200 pounds. Harris is about 15 pounds heavier. So when you look at Jayden Limar, I see a little bit of Sean Dollars, right? And go back to that 2022 backfield. Dollars had a role. He was a third down pass catching guy. He was also in a 2-back set in the backfield with Noah Whittington from time to time. So I could see Limar having that sort of role, and I don't think Jay Harris is as likely to be in that kind of scat back or passing down sort of guy or anything like that. But I also don't think Limar could have Harris's role. Now maybe all 4 play. Maybe Jordan James, Noah Whittington, Jay Harris, and Jayden Limar all are going to play and have established roles. But the battle between Limar and Harris could be for who steps up in the event that either Whittington or James were to get injured, right? Which is what we saw last year, of course, with Noah Whittington, unfortunately, and Jordan James stepped up because he was ahead, because he had a year of experience, of course. He was ahead of Dante Dowdell, and he was ahead of Jayden Limar. And, if this Oregon staff is able to keep Limar around after Dante Dowdell transferred out, certainly they have to have some message that is getting through to him about what his role could actually be. But do I see Limar cracking the top 2 of the rotation this year? No. Is he talented enough to be that at a Power 4 school? Absolutely. So the interest in Andrew Paul, I think, could absolutely be rooted in either Riggs or maybe Limar. seeking greener pastures when it comes to playing time. And, Riggs doesn't have the position coach who brought him there. Now, maybe he really likes Rashad Samples, and, the early quotes about him have, of course, been positive. You don't really expect to hear anything else at this point in time, frankly. I don't think there's ever been a position coach that gets hired this time of year and you hear kids or coaches saying, he's whatever. He's fine. Like, no, they're going to say good things about him, and Samples has a really, really strong reputation there. So somehow, this thought had not crossed my mind, but when you sent that question, it immediately clicked of, wow, he could. Yeah, someone could be leaving. And of course, coaches tend to know that sort of stuff ahead of time before all of us do as fans and media members. So that could be part of the interest there. Now, I haven't heard anything on the Andrew Paul front and whether he is close to making a decision or how much in the mix Oregon truly is. But certainly if he came in, I could see one of Riggs or Lamar transferring out. Really, really good question there. Keeping it a little bit associated with running backs here, this question from Zahim. Mailbag Q. If you had to choose today, not tomorrow, today. I'm just messing with you, being a dweeb as usual. Who would you pick to lead the team in touchdowns this season? My pick is Jordan James. I know he's going to split carries, but call it a hunch. Go Ducks. So I assume you're talking about running backs because Dillon Gabriel is going to account for the most touchdowns on Oregon's offense this year. So let's take the quarterback out of the equation because that feels like it is not fair. Jordan James would be my number one pick because while Jay Harris's potential to be a short yardage guy is very real, remember that's how Jordan James began his career. He's really good in those spots. He's so physical, and as Dan Lanning put it recently, he runs angry, and that's exactly what you need when you're, first and goal to 3. Hey, we want to just punch this in. That was on the cinematic recap against Oregon State last year. You heard someone, I think it was Drew Maringer or Will Stein, come on the headset and say, hey, do we want to just punch this in? That was, for those listening, your audio didn't cut out or anything. There was a word that I'm not going to repeat, which is okay. It's football. Sort of stuff happens. So did they want to punch it in? Yeah. Who'd they punch it in with? Jordan James. Because the guy is just hard to tackle when he gets running downhill because he's just trying to run not over or around you. He's just trying to run right through you. I think he really is a better version of CJ Verdell. I think he's a little bit shiftier with his lateral movement, and it's got a little bit more explosiveness. But, Verdell certainly was a really, really good back for the Ducks. But I'll give you a sleeper pick on, who could lead the Ducks in touchdowns this year. Just this is, again, outside the box sort of thinking, not right in the box, not down the line, because certainly James would be your leading candidate here. But Terrence Ferguson, I could see him having a big touchdown year. Now, Will Stein, said at one point after spring, got to find a way to get him the ball more. You can say that about a lot of guys. But I could see T. Ferg having a big touchdown year, right? He was huge in the Pac-12 title game, catching a couple of touchdowns, of course, and he's got great hands. He makes contested catches. He had that touchdown taken away from him ridiculously by the Pac-12 officials at Arizona State. They called offensive pass interference, and it was just a bad call. But I think with the way that this receiving core is going to catch touchdowns, it's going to be pretty spread out. Because I expect Trayshawn Holden to have a slightly bigger role than he did last year. He was under 500 yards receiving. I think had 4 or 5 touchdowns. I don't know how Evan Stewart, will fare in terms of getting touchdowns in the red zone. Certainly I expect him to have several, but do I think it'll be in the 13-14 range? Like Troy Franklin? No. And Tez Johnson, I think, is going to be the guy who at the very least leads Oregon in receptions. So I wouldn't sleep on Teford because that guy's a weapon in the red zone. I think Oregon recognized that last year with different ways to get him the ball and have him be involved in plays and concepts. So I wouldn't sleep on Teford, but yeah, Jordan James outside of Dillon Gabriel would be my pick to lead Oregon in touchdowns right now, just because between him and Whittington, even if they are splitting carries and both are healthy, James will be the guy that gets the nod in the goal line and short yardage situations because that's where he's shown to be prolific for his entire career. But love the question. As always, keep them coming. Just like the recruits keep coming for the Ducks. And I'm going to keep coming at you, pumping Monopoly Go, because there is a rumor going around that I'm a competitive person. Do you think that's true? Well, I have news for you. It definitely is. So I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, including on this phone right here. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you the big money. The best part is messing with your friends. If you want to charge them rent because you have iconic properties, guess what? You can do that. But if you'd rather play with your friends, you can do that too. You can team up with friends and people around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Oregon has its latest 2025 commitment. It's Isiah Mozee, 4-star wideout from Lee Summit, Missouri, and Lee Summit North High School. He becomes the 6th commit in the 2025 cycle for the Ducks, who now have the 20th ranked class in the country, which is currently comprised of a makeup of players that'll look very different compared to when this recruiting class ends, just given Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy and everybody's history recruiting for the Ducks the last couple of cycles. This is an offensive-heavy class so far. Now, again, there are 6. The 2024 class has got 27. So, we're probably about a quarter of the way towards building a 2025 recruiting class for the Ducks, but certainly with the spring game looming, and as we'll talk about on tomorrow's show with our Locked On recruiting insider Brian Smith, there are a couple of big names visiting this weekend, and recruiting is really going to kick into gear for the next couple months before the dead period that I believe takes place in June, if memory serves. But it's 1 quarterback, 3 receivers. Despite the decommitment they had, still 3 wideouts in this class, 1 edge and 1 interior offensive lineman. That's where Oregon's 2025 high school class looks right now. This is the 3rd receiver commit, as I mentioned. Dallas Wilson, who is a 24/7 composite 5-star wideout. He's committed. Cooper Perry, one of the top players in the state of Arizona, who was the most recent commit before Mozee committed. Those are the 3 wideouts that Oregon's got right now. 2 4-stars and a 5-star. Not bad work for Junior Adams, and you got to put Rashad Samples in the mix certainly as well, especially with Cooper Perry. That was what put him over the top there. But one thing I always look at when a guy commits to understanding, okay, what sort of player is he? What kind of player can he be? Or how well is he thought of in the scouting community, is who else wanted him? Who did Oregon beat out for this commitment? Well, pretty solid list here for the 6'1", 185-pound wideout. He chose the Ducks over Alabama, Auburn, South Carolina, and Missouri, amongst others, but those were all the teams most heavily involved. You may notice a theme there. They're all in the SEC. Arkansas was also, or at least offered him at the very least, and a couple other SEC schools. So to get Mozee is another feather in the cap for Junior Adams, who just continues to recruit really, really high-level guys and go after, big names that other big schools are after here. And when I look at his film, and I'll get Brian's thoughts on his film tomorrow as well, I see a guy that is a big yards after the catch dude, because those are the highlights that he puts on his huddle film, and certainly not every play is like that. But the reason that my first note on him is that he's a big-time yards after catch guy is that the way that he moves through a defense kind of reminds me of a running back. He doesn't catch the ball like a running back. He has lined up at running back from time to time, but the way that he moves through the secondary and the way that he stays balanced, he stays on his feet, he's shifty, he's got a side-to-side component to his ability to make guys miss. He's got that breakaway speed as well that you'd expect for a guy of this caliber. One thing I will say on the speed side of things, I don't really know, and Brian hopefully will be able to offer more insight on this tomorrow. I don't know the caliber of competition that he's going up against. Missouri, I think, has been able to generate some quality recruits over the last couple of years, but is it on the same level of an Arizona or Washington right now? Probably not. I think it's a little bit closer. I could be wrong. I think it's a little bit closer to what Utah is, where you have blue chip guys coming out of that state, but are they consistently going up against Division I guys? Maybe not. So, for Mozee in 2025, I think he's a guy who reminds me very, very much of Braylon Addison. And I don't know what you all remember about Braylon Addison. I have very fond memories of watching him play growing up, because I thought Addison was so solid. And I want to remind myself exactly how tall he was, because that guy was so darn solid. He was 5'10", 190, so a little bit shorter, but the build, and ironically, Addison was from Missouri City, Texas. I don't know. I found that amusing. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Anyway, I'll get back to it here. So when Braylon Addison was with the Ducks, and he, like Mozee, was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, I thought he was just brilliant after the catch, because he did kind of look like a running back with the way that he was just so strong. That's what stood out to me about Mozee is, 6'1", $185, not the biggest guy in the world, but he's, not Troy Franklin or Dante Thornton sort of skinny coming out of high school, but he just looks so built. His frame looks very complete, and the way that he stays on balance to make guys miss and shed tackles just reminds me of the way that Addison used to, catch tunnel screens and just go make big plays. And I'm pretty sure Addison's senior year or last year with the Ducks anyway, was 2015. And he, of course, had that the catch against Arizona State. Don't ask my guy Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils, about that play. He gets very upset. Was Braylon Addison out? I don't know. Maybe. Will we ever know? We kind of know. But he was in, or at least that's what the officials told us. So I think that for Mozee, having that sort of guy is always going to be valuable, because anyone who can help out a quarterback, that's quarterback's best friend, right? Bo Nix, who do you like throwing the ball to last year a lot? Tez Johnson, Troy Franklin. What were they really good at? Yards after catch. And I think that's where Mozee can really, really shine. A guy that, at 6'1", can probably line up both inside and outside, much like Braylon Addison did. But I think he's someone who you just want to get the ball to. And I'd wonder if they use him in gadget situations. He has a little bit of experience lining up at running back. Braylon Addison from time to time would line up in the backfield and, be handed the ball or take it on sweeps, or Scott Frost would try to do the Philly special, and it never worked, but he kept trying it. It was like my biggest beef with Scott Frost when he was OC. He was very good, but he kept trying that and it wasn't working. And that bothered me to no end. But anyway, so I really like Mozee. I think that he, can bring a lot to the table. And the question that, two questions that come to mind when a guy like this commits. Number one, what's his timeline? Because is he ready to play in 2025? That's a question perhaps better asked for Brian Smith. And remember, I'll have Brian on tomorrow's show, so make sure that you tune in wherever you're listening to or watching this show right now. It'll, of course, be available in your feed on Friday's episode as well. Is he ready to play in 2025? Because Oregon will have plenty of need at the wide receiver position. It can be hard to play as a true freshman. Not impossible at the wide receiver spot, though. So that's question number one. And then question number two, this is the fun one. Who's going to throw him the football? If he's not playing till 2026, who's throwing him the football? Is it Austin Novosad? Is it Dante Moore? Is it Achilles Smith Jr.? I don't know. You tell me. Kind of a fun question to think about, isn't it? I'm just saying. I'm also saying that the spring game is 9 days away. I am most excited. April 27th. Cannot wait. That is next Saturday, if memory serves. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.